Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here and welcome to the first episode of How to Multiplayer. This will be a new series on the Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer scene where we'll be talking about tips, builds, or strategies that will help you on your way to climb the online ladder. Now to kick off the series, we'll be facing the dreaded Dawi corner camp boxes. As you can see here, they deployed quite far back in the deployment zone with a bunch of cannons, thunders, some tough Dwarven warriors surrounding and protecting the flanks, slayers to grind down infantry and cavalry alike, armed with miners with blasting charges, iron drakes, led by powerful hero. They can basically crush any forces you throw at them, as the cannonballs rip through your formations from afar, and as you approach the army, the hail of bullets will tear your army to shreds. And then even if you go into hand-to-hand combat against these guys, the blasting charges, flamethrowers, shield walls of the Dawi will totally grind you down along with the powerful hero they've got. So, you see your opponent's army sitting back and just waiting for you to approach them. What do? Do you throw everything at them and hope for the best, or just simply pray for a better opponent next time? No, you fight fire with fire, and that is what we're bringing today. An empire build specifically designed to counter the Dwarven army corner campers. So yeah, here we have a bunch of state troops for screening out any Dawi infantry, a line of handgunners, and now the most important part of the army, great cannons, Helstorm rocket batteries, in fact triple Helstorm rocket batteries with the Sunmaker. These guys having less ammunition than regular Hellstorms, only 8 compared to the 22 for the regular Hellstorms, but actually have triple the projectiles, like shots per volley 9 of these compared to the regular 3 of these. 3 rockets per volley for the regular Hellstorm. They also have better accuracy and just do a lot more damage in general. Really crucial to counter the army of the Dawi here. And yeah, we'll see how they do as we start the battle. Now, for the rest of the army, some Outriders for the mobile AP skirmish firepower, Bright Wizard with Fireball, Burning Hand, Kindle Flame, and Huntsman General, bring in a bunch of supporting abilities. So now that we're done with the army comps, let's get the battle started. So as both armies deployed a bit out of each other's firing range, the artillery are now like slowly inching forward, ready to shoot down each other as they get into firing range. Now here is where Hellstorms actually have the advantage over regular cannons, because they have 480 range, they outrange cannons, so they can now start shooting before the cannons even start reloading and prepping for fire. And yeah, also with the cannon deployed slightly in the front of these Hellstorm, the cannons are now shooting in before anything else, ripping apart the formations of the miners, picking apart models here and there, and now you can see the glorious rockets raining down on the Dawi artillery. The saturation of rockets just blasting these poor cannon crew of the Dawi, and yeah, already down to half health, took a serious hit on the leadership. These guys will probably get finished in a couple more volleys. And now here, to add insult to injury, a fireball is casted by the Bright Wizard. And with that lore attribute, Kindle Flame, 22% weakness to fire damage, these guys are taking a lot more damage from, yes, you guess it, the Sunmaker actually does fire damage. So as a result, anything that got hit by the rockets are taking extra damage now, as well as the cannons who are boosted by Hell of Fire, adding fire damage to cannons and handgunners. And yeah, look at the devastation of the artillery, laying waste to these poor Dawi with rockets, explosions, cannonballs ripping in. The cannon crew already down half health as with these slayers and thunders who overlapped because probably my opponent panicked and rushed the whole army forward, unaware that these saturated, densely packed formation of the Dawi will take extra damage from the explosives. And yeah, as you can see, the fireball hasn't even landed, and my opponent basically threw the towel then and there. Now let's look at how this army actually works. So for the army build, you need a bunch of Helstorm rocket batteries. The Sunmaker, I personally say, is the most important of all. Yes, they have less ammunition, so they can fire less volleys, but for every volley they fire, they do triple or even, dare I say, 5 to 6 times the damage of the regular Hellstorm rocket battery variant. That's simply because not only do they have more missiles per volley, but they also have higher accuracy, which means their firepower can be concentrated and in a very small area instead of the very spread out pattern you see on regular Hellstorms. And that is what you need to rely on to take out the cannon crews ASAP. One thing you do not have against a Dwarven artillery fight is time, because a Dwarven artillery fight is a lot like that of a Dwarven infantry fight. You start trading blows with them, and in the end you realize you can't really grind them down. They have better accuracy, better leadership, and better survivability in their crewmen, so their crew will definitely last longer than your artillery. So what you need is a huge, ridiculous amount of burst damage that the Sunmaker provides to obliterate all their cannons, and then gradually work down their infantry and other characters with the other artillery pieces like the regular Hellstorms and great cannons. So yeah, definitely bring these Sunmaker. You often see people bring quad Hellstorms and streams or whatnot, but I feel like personally Sunmaker is the better choice because it just gives so much burst damage that destroys the Dawi gun line. And once the artillery routed, you can send in your mobility or whatnot to pick them off. The selection of cannon here is no accident either. It is not only a cheaper form of artillery, but it also provides that kind of concentrated precision and armor-piercing missiles that you need to pick off artillery models. Hellstorms are great at blowing up artillery crewmen, but on artillery models, they can't really do much against these. So they provide us just a steady source of firepower to counter artillery cannon fire from the Dawi. Plus, it is a cheaper form of artillery that you can put in front of your formation of Hellstorms, and your opponent will have to be forced to choose between either shooting the cannon, which will yield them less benefit, or shoot the Hellstorm rocket batteries, while getting precisely picked off by these great cannons. It is a matter for your opponent's choosing, but this is not going to be a fun choice. Basically a piece of distraction artillery. And then you have a bunch of handgunners for armor-piercing missiles to shoot down any Dwarven units that gets near, a little bit like that of a single player, especially those you see on Legend of Total War's channel, where you just try to shoot out every single melee unit before they even get close. And then you have a bunch of state troops. Not really there to do much, they can't really outgrind Dwarven infantry anyways, but they're excellent for speed bumps, just holding back the Dwarven lines and allowing your firepower to do the damage they need. And then you also have your mobility here. Personally, I prefer Outriders because they have a pretty reliable source of armor-piercing damage, also having pretty good range for a skirmishing cavalry. As for the general, you have a bunch of choices. Huntsman General or Marcus Wolfhart will work as well. Basically, you want a form of cheap and powerful range lord that can provide support to the rest of the army. Again, this is a personal preference, and you can also choose something with a powerful melee combatant like General of the Empire, Boris Todbringer, Calfront, but personally I prefer range heroes. Best of them all, Huntsman General, really cheap but with really good supporting abilities. Hail of Fire providing that reload skill buff, and also fire damage that synergizes with the Bright Wizard's Kindle Flame. And this Oil Flask, giving 50% of flame weakness, and bundled with Kindle Flame, that's bumping up to all the way to 72%. Pretty ridiculous amount, as everything can be imbued with fire damage with his abilities. Just a cheap, great support unit in general. And as for Marcus Wolfheart, the other preferred choice of mine, he's just a really good sniper damaging lord with a bunch of damaging abilities like focus shot and amber bolt, doing massive damage to heroes of the Dawi, and you don't even have to fight them in melee. And most importantly, Hunter Snares, an area of effect ability that snares your opponent, lock them in place, and provide a perfect target for your range to shoot at. As for the spellcasting department, you are free to choose from a bunch of spells actually, since the Empire actually has such a versatile spellcasting roster. But personal favorite, definitely Bright Wizard, with Kindle Flame synergizing with Sunmaker and the Huntsman General's abilities. They can provide a pretty good damage buff to your units, as well as providing that extra fireball to pick off cannon models, or Burning Head in case you need an emergency blob clearing method. Of course, you can also pick the Ember Wizard. I haven't tried this, but technically you can use Ember Spear to shoot from the side and clear out a bunch of Dwarven infantry lines, or just simply summon a Manticore here and call him to feast on the back lines of your Dawi opponent. If you bring Marcus Wolfheart, then you might enjoy bringing the Light Wizard as well, simply for the fact that you can spam nets. With the Hunter Snare active, you can snare down half of the Dawi front line, and using the Overcast Net of Ementalk, you can snare down the other half. With half the army snared down by the nets, you have a pretty chill time just shooting everything in the vicinity and routing them before they even have the chance to go in hand-to-hand combat. So time for a little talk about the application of this build. First of all, you have to deploy a little bit further to the back, just so you have a little bit more space between your army and your opponents, so the Helstorm rocket batteries can expand their ammo and lay waste to your opponents. And you also want to have cannons in front in case they start shooting into your artillery. They'll give you a little bit of distraction, as I said before, and they have to pick between the great cannons or the Helstorms, which, yeah, buys you time for either of these artillery pieces to expand their ammo and do the damage they need to win you your game. As for the infantry, you want to deploy them quite loose. Just screen them out to screen out Dwarven infantry, delay them as much as possible so that your ranged units can do their work. And as battle starts, your artillery would be pounding enemy lines, just deleting their infantry ranged units, striking their artillery. And as you do that, and your infantry holding back the Dwarven lines, your mobility should be actively looking for openings. Say here, these Outriders have a big opening to whip around and go through into the back lines of the Dwarven army. And then, from then on, they can just work down silence the artillery of the Dwarves, or chase down routing units from behind, or just shoot into the backs of the Dwarven units, avoiding their shield and doing some effective missile damage. Of course, your wizard should not be idle as well. For example, over here with the Fire Wizard, imbuing the fire weakness to everyone on the map, allowing the Sunmaker to do additional damage is very crucial in winning out in the early game. You want to have an early game advantage because with a competent opponent, they will know that they have to push and go for your lines. So just like here, my opponent abandoned his artillery and pushed his whole army forward, crashing into the Empire lines with his strong hero core, Grombrindo, Gotrek and Felix already in the face of the Empire artillery. So these range units, chances are they're not going to have all the time in the world to do the damage. And now they basically have to run as they're pressured by the melee units of the Dwarves. And yeah, at this point they have to basically expand as much ammo as they can before getting knocked off their artillery pieces and just get cleaned up by the powerful heroes. So basically, as I've said, this build is specifically designed for dealing with box builds and corner campers. As you can see, once your opponent left their boxes and start charging at you, things will get a lot harder. As you can see, I totally did not have as much of a clean victory as you would have imagined when you first watched the initial replay, but I still believe that it's pretty good, since if they rush in, it's a fair fight. Both of you have to fight tooth and nail to see who comes out on top in the end, and just win with your skills, and instead of somebody sitting back and wait for the other to move and charge in. And if your opponent sits idly and hopeful and just hoping for that easy victory on his ass, well, good. Then you just let him sit on his ass and blow him up to smithereens, and use those rockets to incinerate him. So there you have it, a build designed specifically to counter the Dwarven corner camp. In my personal opinion, I think that box builds are fine. Static builds, artillery builds are fine because it's just part of the game. You have Skavens, you have Empire, you have Zombie Pirates. They all have their own artillery boxy builds. It's just that the Dwarven box builds are much harder to crack due to their durable frontline, shield walls, high armor, high defense. They can tank out forever while providing a safe space for their missile units to fire at their enemy. And that is fine, it's just how they're designed. It only gets annoying when your opponent decides to consider this as the easy way to win the game. Like, say, my opponent in the first replay who basically rage quit in the first 2 minutes. When we matched up, he basically instantly picked and readied up with the Dwarven army. So at this point, it's pretty obvious he will be using an easy build like the Dwarf box. And that is basically I was thinking, okay, if you want to play the boring game, then I'll bring the boring game to you. And that is why I designed this artillery build. Thanks to the inspiration of a lot of other players on YouTube and in Discords of other YouTube streamers. They really helped out with all the ideas. And yeah, this is what happened. I think this build is kind of boring, especially when fighting a Dwarven corner camp build, because all you have to do is just sit on both ends of the map and click some buttons, wait for the dust to clear out, and hopefully your opponent will be more battered than yours. And honestly, that is no fun at all, because you don't really have that exciting exchange of hand-to-hand combat. You don't have any strategic maneuvers, just two people sitting on behind two desks clicking buttons. Now that sounds a lot like modern armed conflict, honestly, but yeah, not the most fun at all. Like, when you basically focus on using this build, like this kind of corner camp build, you kind of forgo the chances of getting better in the game with riskier and more micro-intensive builds. And yeah, I mean, that's just my personal opinion, because you basically need to practice your micro to get better, and simply sitting at the corner huddling up with your troops is not the best way. So yeah, this build is basically forcing your opponent to get off their ass and push you. Just go aggressive and push towards your front line, exactly what my opponent did right here. Just really putting the pressure onto the fragile front line of the Empire. As you can see, the front line already buckling and they have units pushing into the back lines. And I really appreciate it, even if this means that I have a greater chance to lose, because yeah, it's just fun to have a little bit of back and forth of exchange of violence. You have units pushing in, shooting into these less protected artillery pieces, and you have like tactical maneuvers, outriders whipping behind, trying to hunt down the shattered units. And the Dwarven's army is just desperately pushing in to shut down the missile core. It's just more fun this way, I would say. And yeah, that's basically what I have for today. So if you like this video, please do like and subscribe. I would really appreciate your support. And if you have any ideas, any like say issues on multiplayer that you want somebody to address it, or just figure out how to deal with a certain situation, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Let me know about it, and I'll be sure to check it out and see if I can make a video out of it and answer your queries. Or you have some ideas about some underused units, or a new strange tactic, you want somebody to test it out for you, then yeah, I'll be sure to check it out as well, and yeah, I would love to help. So yeah, that is the end of today's replay, and I hope you enjoy it and learn how to deal with well, Dwarven corner camps a little bit better. And I wish you all the best on the Total War Warhammer online multiplayer scenery, and yeah, Tactical Lich signing out.